themselves a boost just to make it through like a tough day.
True. Very true.
So, and thank you so much for your From Friends line and all that's raised for us. That's amazing.
Of
And I'm sure
course.
a lot of the people in this room have probably purchased that. And I want to ask you a little bit more about what that means, but let's dive first into your story. Tell me a little bit about when you first started to kind of sense that something was different or wrong.
I think so. I didn't realize this until recently, and I had my panic attack, and it has had my complete mental breakdown. But I feel like ever since I was younger, I've had instances of stress and anxiety and panic just increasing, like right to the tipping line before it gets to a physical condition.
Right.
And I've had that constantly, and I just wasn't aware that that's what it was. It was kind of like how I was lactose, and I didn't realize I was lactose until someone told me that there's such thing as being lactose intolerant.
Yep.
And I just thought people lived with stomach aches their whole life, and I wasn't aware why I had to use the bathroom every time on the way to LA in the 30-minute traffic after I drank my milk at school. And it was just one of those things that you feel like it's natural and normal. But then I just really got normalized to that and desensitized to it. And I just started feeling like, oh, well, I mean, everyone's stressed and everyone's feeling this way. So, you know what, maybe I should just be quiet and just live my life. And it didn't really strike me until I would say it was like early this year, March, January, March, April-ish, or somewhere right before our debut or our comeback. I was in this car and I was on my way to, I just shot something for this project that I'm doing, and then I was just on my way home. And then I told the taxi guy, like, I felt this sudden weird feeling coming on. I couldn't breathe all of a sudden. And there was no trigger. There was nothing there. There was no reason for it. I just feel like the subconscious me having pushed down my ability to tell myself that it's okay to feel these things for so long had finally kind of just pushed through that barrier and it popped everything off. And I started feeling physical symptoms. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was going to die. I thought I was having a heart attack and I thought this is it. But kind of like how you mentioned, it's funny that the timing, Corona, and it still is predominant within society. So to the taxi driver, I have to seem completely fine. And I just have this really weird, wide plastered smile on my face telling the taxi driver, please take me to the hospital. Just forget about my current address that I was supposed to go to. Please take me to the hospital, sir. And I'm just clutching at my thighs, hoping and praying to God that this isn't the moment, that I'm taken back, and just really feeling hopeless.
Yeah.
And I get to the hospital and then they diagnose me and they're like, nothing's wrong with you. And I'm like, what? That makes no sense. I thought I was gonna die a second ago. And then they did all the blood work. They said, you're hyperventilating, but other than that, we don't see anything in any of your blood work, in any of your scans. And then after that, I went through several medical procedures. So I was like, there's no way that this isn't something that's real. Because it was so physical and it was so real to me, like as if it was an actual, like a disease that I had contracted or something. So, or an illness. And then I did all these medical examinations. I did MRI scans, CAT scans. I went through all of this and all of this. They all said nothing. There was no results for anything. So eventually they were like, I think at this point you go to a psychologist and you try looking at them. And I was still skeptical. I was like, okay, this is stupid. Like, really? I've never had a problem with this before in my life. Like, why would it be this? And then I ate the medication that they gave me and I felt better. And that's what proved to me, oh, wow, mental health is actually something that exists. And to be completely honest, like I supported people and I definitely have always been an advocate of people for mental awareness, but this made me a really, really strong advocate because it actually gave me a personal experience to believe that and to better understand what people actually go through who have these problems. So that's my story.
Yeah, and I actually think that's you know, when you think about how horrible that can feel, whether it's anxiety or, you know, it's panic where you feel like you can't move or breathe, or just depression to you can't get out of bed, that's hard enough. But then having to deal with other people who can't really empathize, who are like, well, it can't be that bad, because they're comparing it to their level of sad or their level of panic, which is just
Right.
different. So it's not that anyone, I think it's not that people intend not to understand. It's just hard if you've never felt it. Um, now,
Yeah.
now, after that first kind of the panic attack, did it kind of stay with you until you started the treatment, or did it like come and go?
So the thing is, it came and went. After that first trip to the doctors, they told me nothing was wrong. Symptoms faded out. On the way home, all these tears just start streaming down my face, and I was like, this is really weird. But I think my body was like starting to accept it subconsciously and letting it go. And then and after that, like a week after that, I had another panic attack, and I was like, this is getting kind of weird. And this was like this process for me going to the hospital. You can't get a CAT scan and MRI scan the next day. That's just not
Right.
how it works here. So I had to prepare months in advance. I had to check, like, I had to do other procedures to test my heart rate and if there were abnormalities in my heart. And I was just doing this back and forth with the hospital for about 2 months. And during these 2 months, first couple weeks after the panic attack, I would have a panic attack every week. And then it became like an everyday kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was getting super desperate. And towards the end of it, we finally got the right meds, and I was able to kind of, oh, like I'm cool now. We're chilling.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
But it is, and did you find too that in addition to better understanding what other people were going through, I think you alluded to this before, but did it make you kind of look back and realize, oh, some of that stuff that I thought was just normal might not have been, like that it was building up over time?
100%,
Yeah.
I would say that that was the truth. And
Yeah.
subconsciously, I feel like a lot of people push away their anxieties or their fears or they repress all their emotions. And that's one of the main factors that I've been trying to advocate during this whole From Friends campaign, is that, look, buying the merch is great, but reaching out to someone, our campaign slogan is literally lending a helping hand to whomever and whoever, wherever there's a need for such. And buying the merch is great. Helping the cause is great, but you could also help the cause further, because all we're trying to do with this money is to be able to fund the opening of more dialogue, and just to be able to get rid of this taboo in certain societies and cultures that mental health is not something that you should be talking about. You shouldn't be repressing your feelings, or you shouldn't be, I mean, I'm not saying go to your friends and tell them everything that you feel all the time, because then at one point you might find that you don't have any friends anymore to tell your feelings
Right.
to. But the point is, don't feel like you shouldn't be able to talk about things when you need to talk about things, or when you feel like you want to talk about things. Don't be that person who's always crying at home and always strong in front of everyone else because you feel like that's the right thing to do, because you feel like society tells you to be that person. And that's another strong factor that I've really been advocating, is that um, I feel like sometimes these days idols in my genre are known to be more perfectionists and are known to only show more of their perfect sides. And I feel like that's one of the stigmas that we really need to break, because what kind of role models are we really if we're only showing our perfect and most beautiful sides, and
Yeah.
showing our next generation that, and normalizing this idea of, oh, since they are our idols and they are perfect all the time, we must be perfect. But in actuality, everyone's a human being, and they're just showing you what they want to show you. So I feel like normalizing perfection and normalizing this beauty standard that's impossible is not right. And therefore I try to show more of my human side with my interactions with my fans. I do Twitch, I do Instagram, I do YouTube, I do music, and I'm always, I'm an advocate for being the dumb person that I am.
Yeah.
And I think there's a little bit of truth to that to everybody.
Yeah. But you know what I can tell you, having worked with artists and like fan bases for a really long time around this issue, is that it's people that kind of let their weird out, or like just say
Yeah.
whatever. They
Yeah.
usually have, like, that's why you have 7,000 people that would come in here and talk, like, from a conversation they knew was going to be about mental health. It's not like we tricked them, and
Yeah.
came in. And I think that's so important. And also, a lot of research says that there's a lot of people that feel like if they can get, because of those produced lives that we see, a
Yeah.
lot of people feel like if they can get famous or they can get rich or the next milestone, that all their problems will go away. And and I know from living in LA and, like, the work that we do, that that's not true. In fact, all that does is just amplify whatever problems already existed.
Right.
And so I think it's really important, to be honest. And one of the things that's always so confusing to me is, like, why it is so hard for societies and cultures to think about mental health like we do about physical health. Because with physical health, we're told things to do to be proactive. Like, people don't sit around and wait for you to get heart disease. They tell you, like, there are things you can do your
Yeah.
whole life to prevent it. And mental health is the same way.
Right.
And what I love about hearing you say that this kind of started during the pandemic and now you've gotten treatment, you're doing better. That's a lot of times how mental health conditions are. It's not like you have it and you're just stuck there your entire life.
Yeah.
Like, all on this, continuum where we're moving back and forth. And sometimes the difference, there's a piece of mental health that's genetic, right? But there's been studies done, like, on identical twins, and you can have one identical twin that grows up and deals with severe depression, and another one doesn't. So it just kind of reiterates that the things that we do, the way we cope, the way pressures put on us, it really can impact it a lot.
I totally 100% agree with you. And I actually didn't know that there was genetics involved in depression and anxiety. That's really interesting to hear.
So we tend to, when we look at TVs and movies, like, when somebody gets depressed, they always need to, for the narrative, make it for, like, one reason, right? Like, the breakup, and I don't want to, I don't feel like I can take it anymore. In reality, our mental health, it's kind of like our physical health. Like, we're born with a certain, set of kind of physical attributes. We might be predisposed to certain things. Diabetes runs in our family, but that doesn't mean that there might be a small percentage of people that get, like, they're diabetic in a way that no matter what they do, they're going to really struggle.
Right.
Most of the time we have some control over it. We can, moderate what we eat, moderate our lifestyle. Right. And mental health is the same way. We're born with kind of a blueprint where maybe we have a predisposition to depression or a predisposition to anxiety, but then how we're raised, how we're taught to look at mental health, what coping skills we're taught.
Yeah.
All of that, and then the situation that you're in. So when you see those things where you see somebody who went through, like, a breakup, or the pandemic starts and they just, like you said, had a meltdown, it's not just because of that one thing that happened. It's all of these things together, and that's like the tipping point, right? It's like, whatever. So when you look at it that way, there gets to be all these parts we have control over. We can change what we think about mental health. We can change our coping strategies. We can change our support network. There's things we can't change, but there's a lot of it we can. Which I was also curious to ask, like, in addition to, kind of medication, were there, like, coping strategy? Are there things that you've developed that kind of help you beyond that, or is it kind of under control with the medication?
To be completely honest, I've tried to block out a lot of the things that stress me out. Before, I would look at social media a lot, and because it's part of my job. It's part of my job to maintain a certain image and to become this personality and public figure. And you know what? I kind of realized after a point, because the medication definitely helped, but then I started relapsing, and then I realized that it's because I'm stressing myself out and I'm giving myself more stress than I need. and I didn't need to be wary of all these perspectives. As long as I felt like, as long as I knew that in my heart I was right and that I was in the right perspective and I was doing the right thing and I was trying my best to be the right person for the right people, then I felt like that should be enough. And just because some people try to take a perspective and skew it and try to play with your words, that I shouldn't be bothered with that. So I just started muting people on Twitter, especially.
Yeah.
And that helped me a lot, to be honest.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to give you, change your words a little bit. Because when you say block out, what that makes me think of is just avoiding an issue.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, you don't need to apologize. I'm just saying block out makes it seem like you're avoiding something. What you're doing is facing it head on, because leaning into your feelings enough to know, when I look at this stuff, it makes me anxious. I don't need to read this stuff from, like, it's not part of my job to read all of these things. That's treating your mental health like you would your physical health. Because if you were doing something every day and every time you did it, it physically hurt, you would stop doing it. But with mental health, we just keep doing it over. I don't know. I do it too. You know, like, we keep doing the same things. And I think it's because sometimes it's hard to create change, you know, or whatever. But it's really important to kind of think about what are the things that are usually happening when I feel like this.
Right.
So you can, sorry, I have lots of dogs. You can, boys. So you can you can control it, like, and you can control it. We have a campaign that's launching in November that actually some of the money you've raised probably will help push out, where we're developing this press pause hub, where, like, you'll have like a press pause icon on your phone, and anytime you're feeling overwhelmed, you can just press pause and immediately access like short videos of breathing exercises, affirmations. Because the thing we don't realize sometimes is those moments when we're panicked are really bad times to make decisions. They're really bad times to, like, make choices, because we're all discombobulated.
Right.
It's literally learning how to, like, decompress in the same way that if you were so overheated or out of breath, you'd stop, right? You'd be like, quit. We don't, for some reason, when it comes to our emotions, we get riled up and we just get bigger and bigger and bigger, instead of saying, like, oh, I should just walk away for a second.
It's true. I agree with that.
What, and I see there's a lot of questions coming in, and here's one right now. Do you have any daily self-care practices?
Do I have any daily self-care practices? Take my meds. I'm religious, so I do my prayers. Drink a cup of coffee, and before I go into a meeting or before I talk to someone that has to do with work, or before I even start anything, I always just kind of take a breath and just think about the good things in life, and then go in.
Do you know that one of this sounds so simple, but one of the things that the research says is most powerful is making gratitude lists? Interesting. And especially the research says if you do it routine, like you do it every night, and actually the nights that are most important to do it are the nights you really don't want to. And you're like, I'm not grateful for any, like, you're like, this sucks. Those are the nights you need to do it most, because it actually changes the way that our brain works. It's really hard for anxiety to have, like, its full grip if we're thinking about something we appreciate. You know, it's hard to do that. I'm kind of my friends make fun of me. Like, this behind me is a steam tent, and behind that there's like a spin bike, and I'm a little self-care overload. But I do find that when I don't do that, when I get really busy and I just stop doing anything to take care of myself, I become less productive. Like, I'm not fun to be around. So it's important to do that. Let's we have another couple questions.
Love the hair, by the way.
Oh, thank you. It's either quarantine or midlife crisis or both. I'm not sure. Okay,
I'm praying it's quarantine.
How do you how do you control your anxiety when it comes up? Like when it does come up now, or the things that you do to...
That's not something that I can help you with, because for me, or whoever asked that question, I would just say the best thing to do is when you do have a real physical manifesting form of anxiety, the first thing that you want to do is get consulted for medication. And that's what I'm going to recommend, because that's what worked for me. I tried doing a psychiatrist, and I'm sure it's different for everyone else. Some people, like one of my teammates, also took a leave of absence with me, and they felt better just by, you know, just talking to people and just getting out of this area and just being able to be free and sociable and taking a break and taking a breather for a while. That made them okay. For me, I could not go outside. I was secluded in my room, and even then I felt like I was dying every day. So I, for me, it was medication. I think I needed medication. There was no other way out. So if for anyone in that situation, I think the first thing I would do is consult a therapist or consult someone that has knowledge in that field, and either try to get therapy, whether it's verbal or medicated.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll footnote and say that, like, in 2020, I have a feeling that most everybody's feeling anxiety, like of some sort. And not all anxiety is bad, honestly. Like, anxiety is our body's way of protecting us sometimes. Like, some of the things we're anxious about, we're anxious about because we shouldn't do them. But I think that the way we kind of describe that point when you need to really dig into it is when it starts interfering with your ability to do things. You know, it's not just that every once in a while I'm overwhelmed, like I can't concentrate, my relationships are strained. That's when it's important to talk to someone. And it's different for everyone. It sounds like for you, the physiological part of it, the part that like the medication controls is a really big part of it. For some other people, it might be rooted to trauma or something that happened to them, and there might be more kind of situational or psychological sides to it that you do need to do more of the coping exercises and kind of thing. But I think that's what's important is realizing that just like almost everything in life, there's not like one way. And that's one of the walls I see people run into is they try to do it. They have a friend that was anxious and they're like, I'm going to do the same thing. And then when it doesn't work, they get frustrated.
Right.
You know, again, it's just like physical health. We don't all get treated we don't all get treated in the same way. We're different.
Right.
So I think that that's a really valid suggestion. And I think it's important, especially with anxiety, to talk about medication. It doesn't mean that everybody needs to take it, but we definitely need to take the stigma away from taking it.
Right.
Like there should be no more stigma around anti-anxiety and antidepressants than there are antibiotics. You know, I mean, it's
right.
If you need them and they're given to you in the right way, that's what medicine is for. I saw somebody ask, and this is a good lead in, because you mentioned before and you talked about like cultural barriers to help seeking, like different cultures. Talk to me a little bit about, so like for me, for example, I grew up in a very Southern conservative town. My dad was a Southern Baptist minister. So even though I'm not really from one of the kind of cultural groups that we sometimes see really high barriers to talking about it, I did grow up in a place where no one talked about it, because like your solution was to pray it away, you know, and that's a challenge too. Those two things can exist together. Religion and psychiatry can exist together.
Sure.
But talk to me a little bit about what you see with your like friends and family and people around you. Like, is there a high resistance to talking about mental health?
Well, I think for my parents and themselves, like even my family background, it was more like you pray to the Lord and everything works out in His time, right? And I am a strong believer of that, but I also believe that His will is done through us as a vessel. So we need to be proactive in order for His will to manifest. That's just what I believe religiously, and I'm sure other people have different religions. As for the cultural aspect, I think, like I told you, the standard of normality within my field of work is perfection. And therefore, perfection does not include being mentally unstable.
Right.
And with that stigma also comes, you are not allowed to show those kinds of feelings or show those kinds of emotions or even say that you're feeling those kinds of emotions. And that's why even till this day, I feel like a lot of people are still suffering, and a lot of people in my line of work are really struggling with a hard time, but they don't know who to turn to and where to turn to because everyone shuts them down, especially if they're doing well, because they're going to lose money.
Yeah.
And that's just the sad corporate truth of it, because
Right.
at the end of the day, it's a product, and if that product loses value, then the corporation loses value.
Right.
And I think that's really sad. And I've been fortunate enough to be in a company where I was able to tell my CEO, look, I feel like I'm done with my life. I
Right.
feel like I'm about to die. And then he said, you know what? Don't worry about it. Take some time off, figure it out, and you're good. And that's what he's told every other artist when they've come to him the same way. And I really respect our CEO due to that.
Yeah.
And I don't know what else to say. I just wish that it could be different. I just wish that the standard of perfection could be lessened. And I just hope for in my ideal world, I'm just hoping that people who do music could be seen as people who do music and not as people to be idolized or romanticized or just thought of as these Greek mythological figures who can do no wrong and are strong enough to break barriers like Hercules and have all these mystical powers that normal human beings don't, because in actuality that's not the case and that's not the truth. And as much as magic and mirrors do in Hollywood and everywhere else around the world for the entertainment industry, they're just as human as you are, and they feel exactly the same things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll kind of add, that's my wish too, and I'll add on to that. I also, you kind of alluded to the fact that, like, you know, when you hit a bottom like this, when you, like, you know, have a meltdown, or, you know, it's a really tough time, that's a lot of the times where we look back and go, God, I was worried about a lot of crap that didn't happen. Like, why was I, like, why, like, you know, I'll even say to the pandemic, like, I've been walking around this neighborhood in a onesie with pink hair for 6 months. Like, my give a crap factor is, like, really low right now. And you look back and you're like, why did I ever care? Like, why did I ever care so much? I want a world where you don't have to crash and burn to have that feeling, where it happens before then. People are like, who cares? Because if everybody would just fess up that none of us have it together, then there wouldn't be so many people, like you said, who kind of live in this. I talk to a lot of young people who basically say, I feel like everybody else has a manual, like a guide to life, that I don't have. Like, I feel like everybody else gets it and I don't.
Yep.
But you know what? I've never met that person who's got it all together. So it's like, almost everybody in my life or I've met professionally that I've thought, gosh, they just have it down. When you get to know them better, everybody has their stuff, you know, and if we could just talk about it.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Be better. Have you found, since you kind of,
because of the mental health problem, or the mental health issue, but we weren't able to promote due to me and some of the other members having these mental problems. And then this was a really big promotion for us, so I thought that a lot of fans would be disappointed with the fact that we couldn't come back and play these songs live and have a concert. And even though it is Corona, you know, we could have done all these other things during this time period. But they have been nothing but welcoming and nothing but warm and respectful and loving for me, which I really do appreciate, and which I think is kind of rare, and that's why I was more so surprised. So just nothing but love for them.
Yeah, that's amazing. And even just looking at the comments, scrolling up, it's an amazing group of people. But then I also just think it also speaks to the power of just being honest. You know, it's like I think where people get frustrated is when they see people kind of struggling and no one will say why. You know, like I feel like when you were talking before about another reason that I think people in the public eye sometimes can't come out is because they know if you show a little crack, there's this whole press machine that's going to come after you. You know what shuts that press machine down the most is just saying it. Like, you know, if you just say it, then there's nothing to speculate.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll still find things to speculate, but
yeah.
But like, how are you feeling these days? Like this week, how are you doing?
I'm feeling much better. I've recently started streaming on Twitch, and I feel like that's another outlet for me because, you know, gaming has always been a passion in my life. It's fun to be able to interact with new communities, and especially during this time of crisis and pandemic where we should be social distancing. And I feel like I'm kind of doing my part, as well as socializing online and making friends, and that I've never would have from across the world on a platform that I never even second thought of doing ever. And that's been super cool. And just keeping up with my meds, I feel good. I mean, I take the extra medication here and there because I still haven't found the trigger to what my anxiety or my panic disorders are. Like I've thought about it for a million times over and over, and I can't find the trigger for it. It's always uncalled for. It's always at the most random times. It'll just be literally me sitting at home, or it'll be me working on set, or it'll be me in the studio, and like I don't get it. Like I could be at home sleeping and I wake up to it. Like there's no trigger for it ever. So I'm still trying to find that, but for the most part, it's been great.
Our minds are very complex machines and stuff they keep, you know, they kind of can process and subconsciously we can be dealing with. But then also, you know, like you said, there's a physiological side to it. Like there isn't always a reason. And I think that's what's frustrating about it.
No.
Yeah. Are you doing talk therapy too, or are you just right now on medication? Are you
okay? Sorry, can I go blow my nose real quick?
You can. I'm sorry. I just like let you do that.
I'll get back.
Go for it. I'll be right here. I can answer some questions. Let's see. I can answer a question. So here's a question I can answer. What would you do if you're scared to tell somebody? I'll say two things about that. One, if there's somebody that you think you need to talk to about that you're scared to talk to, you know, maybe first have the conversation with somebody that you're more comfortable talking to, so that you kind of, sometimes just the first saying it out loud is the hardest part. So if you say it to somebody that you're more comfortable with. But then the other thing is, we've been involved with some like research studies where we interview a lot of people. And I will tell you that almost everybody that was afraid to tell somebody they were struggling because they thought they were going to judge them, after they tells us it was fine. I'm not saying there's never a situation where you tell a parent or somebody that you're struggling and they don't react well, but generally our fear of how they're going to react is much bigger than what actually happens. And when we do surveys and we ask people, if you got treatment for mental health conditions, would people look down on you? Most people say yes. But when we ask them, if you knew a friend that got mental health treatment, would you look down on them? Most people say no. So what that tells us is that a lot of it is just our belief that people are going to judge us. Right. And so my advice is always, when people are scared, is just one, try it on somebody you feel safe with, because after you say it once, it might not be so scary. And then also just know that it's probably not, the reaction's probably not going to be what you think it is. For sure. So we talked about that. Oh, anyway, before I was just saying, like, did you do talk therapy at all, or?
I tried it for a while, and it didn't really help me too much.
Yeah.
Because as much as I'm a pretty transparent person, so everyone that's in my circle knows literally everything about me. So there wasn't really too much to tell to the therapist.
Yeah. Yeah.
um so yeah, I tried that for a couple months and it didn't help. And I tried that way before because I felt like I was getting a little depressed. And then obviously there's the stigma of my work line publicly being seen going to a therapist. So I was doing my counseling through an app called
Hmm.
BetterHelp or something like that. I forget what the name was, but
I
I was
think
going through that app.
it's,
BetterHelp, right? Yeah. So I was going through that app, and I had a wonderful lady that I was talking to, and as great as our conversations were, I feel like I wasn't really evolving from anything, or just there was no take from that. So I stopped that, and then I used the medication, and I was brand new again.
yeah. Well,
It's
and
crazy how that works.
yeah, and it can change. There are some people that it's really helpful to go to a therapist every week. There are some people that go to a therapist when they need to,
Yeah,
and then, it's different. And it can also change. Again, it's just like the physical stuff. It can change. So
yeah,
6 months from now, there may be parts of this that are different, but that's why we have to kind of stay on top of it and like lean into it and, pay attention to it,
right.
and if something changes. Also, I did not know that you were a gamer when I wore my super cool Super Mario onesie,
Yep.
so to tie in. Um, well, I have a question, but I'll do this one. What, you kind of already said this, but what made you finally decide to speak out?
I'm a very transparent person. So everyone in my community, whether they follow me on Twitter, whether they follow me on Instagram, know that I'm pretty honest about everything that happens to me.
Mhm.
And for me, I've always been outspoken about what happens to me at the point that it happens to me. As soon as this happened, I apologized because I told them that I was part of the reason that we weren't able to promote. I was going through this and this. Please give me a little bit of time to be able to fix my issues. Because at that point, I was literally just, I felt like a corpse staring at the roof of my house for literally like 3 weeks, just not feeling anything. And it wasn't the meds. I think it was 26 years or 27 years of that just all coming to me at once. And I felt it. And then I kept taking my medication. I felt better. And what really made me want to do this line, especially, was because, I mean, I've seen other members of brother of my company's other groups, like Seven, do their lines with Represent. And I kind of saw this as an opportunity to raise awareness because I was hoping that I could teach people to cope with these kinds of things, and I could create dialogue and increase awareness about mental health and maybe break the stigma of it just a little bit. Even just a little bit. Touching at the surface would be enough for me. And that's what I was hoping to do with From Friends. And I'm hoping that it's working. We're not sure yet, but we're hoping that it's reaching some ears and it's letting people know that it's okay to feel a certain way. So I would say that for this campaign, I started up for that sole cause. And for me, speaking out about my mental health problems, I feel like it was when it first started. I popped off on it. I was like,
Right.
this is happening to me. What's going on? Help me.
Well, I think that's important. And I know there are some people who kind of don't want to tell their story until they feel like they're all the way on the other side of it and everything's kind of like nice and neat. And I get that, and it's everyone's choice, right? What you want to share.
Mm,
But I do think there's a real value in going through the process with people, because that's what makes the process less scary. Like,
yeah.
if all I'm ever doing is saying I went to therapy, I went to treatment, everything's fine, you're not getting more comfortable with what that looks like.
Yeah.
And I do want to note, because I saw a comment where somebody said that therapy was really important to them. I do want to note that no one's saying that therapy isn't. Talk
Yeah.
therapy,
Yeah.
super important. For most studies actually say the best treatments are a combo of medicine and talk treatment. What I was just
Yeah.
saying, that it's different for everybody. Like, it's a matter of, um, what I say when it comes to talk therapy is exactly what you did. At least try it. Like, at
Mm,
least give it a try. And if it's not working for you, or if you need to go to a different therapist, or you decide you're just going to use therapy when, you know, you think you need to, like, that's really,
Right.
you know, to work out on your end. And then so the from friends, now coming back around to that, you know, was there something specific that your friends or that your kind of support network did that really made a difference, or that made kind of this whole process easier for you?
If I could just add to our previous topic right before jumping on the
Sure.
front fence line, I would also actually highly recommend, for me, from my personal experience, though I'm no expert and I have no expertise or knowledge in this area, and this isn't my field of expertise, like I said, I'm going to say it over and over again just so people don't misquote me, but I would actually, if it was me in your position, I would try counseling first before medication, because medication affects your serotonin levels and it tampers with the chemicals in your brain. So it's going to make you feel a certain way. It's going to change your body, and it's going to do things to you that, you know, work in different ways for different people that may have side effects. But therapy and verbal counseling doesn't. So I would try, if that could work for you, if that could be a sole solution, I would try verbal counseling pre-medication.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And that's generally like, sometimes, you know, people can get medication from their like general practitioner, and that's a bad thing to do, or a bad place to start. But we would always recommend that you also talk to like a mental health professional, because it's also good sometimes to be in touch with someone who really understands the condition, so you can just see how the medication's working. You know,
Right.
like, you know, you can. Sometimes medications can make you feel better for a while, and then you can feel worse again, or, you know, and just one thing I will say too is, like, if you ever decide you need to stop taking your medication, that's definitely something you want to do, you know, in conjunction with a professional, just to make sure everything's fine. But yeah, you're exactly right. To talk therapy, and also it depends on what you're dealing with. Like you said, like, as of now in your journey, yours isn't attached to a specific thing, you know, that you need to also, I'm gonna the JED team member who's monitoring questions, I think she's being polite, and she's saying people keep asking about both your hair. I don't think they're asking about my hair, but there are a lot of questions about your hair. So can we just talk about what color your hair is?
I don't know. Okay. So it's supposed to fade out to like a grayish color, but for now I just got it dyed the other day, so it's still in like this brown ashy color. Yeah, and you got that nice pink going on.
Yeah, I just really dye my hair to match this light behind me. I just, whatever color I actually, those lights change color, and I do change them to match my hair. But that's a pandemic. Like, I don't know what else to do. But my hair is beach blonde, and I just put stuff in it to change.
I love it. I love it.
But I mean, that, you know what? It's like, I think we have to get creative right now, you know, and figure out, how do we deal with all this? Like, you know, in LA, I've been inside since March. You know, we've you know, go out to the stores and stuff, but it's you definitely have to start getting creative. Speaking of pandemic, because I know that Insta Live is going to cut us off here in about 9 minutes, but one of the things that I've heard from people I've talked to who have dealt with new or different mental health struggles during the pandemic, and it sounds like you all are a little bit out in the world, but is kind of a fear of, okay, I have it under control in this setting, but then do I have to, is that something that you think about at all? Is like, you know, kind of the dynamics of when things do return to normal and you go back to your routine? I
am a little bit afraid. I'm not gonna lie. I am afraid of promoting again. I'm afraid because I don't know when it's gonna strike, and I'm just praying that it doesn't hit me during like mid concert, and then I'm at this segue in this cross path where I'm like on stage singing, and all of a sudden it hits, and I don't know what to do. But hopefully, I am hoping that, you know, this time of quarantine, for me personally, could be a time of healing.
Yeah.
And it could be a time where I take some time for myself and learn how to fight this and be proactive about this before I get back to work. Well, I'm already back to work, but before we start promoting again physically in front of audiences and people, so that I could have this all under check and be able to do my best for my fans.
Right. Well, and you also have to remember too, not that you're doing this, but that, you know, when you talked about before that perfectionism, kind of a lot of times people who have struggled with perfectionism will then also try to be perfect about their recovery. You know, it's like, so like I finally got to the point where I admitted that I needed help and I'm getting help, but now I have to be like the perfect patient. And you have to remind people like, it's okay to just have a bad day. Like it's you know, it's, if again, this is where it's tied. If you were dealing with like a physical condition and you were feeling tired and worn down, everybody like, oh, that's totally understandable because you're dealing with this condition and that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
The same way, like it should be the same way, that it's like, if you have panic attacks and 25 days out of the month you're doing well, that's a score. And so if the other 5 you kind of don't do much or aren't as productive, you know, you have to kind of give yourself a break. But the reason I kind of asked you that question about being scared going back into the world is I think it's also okay for us to admit that. Like I've even wondered, like, I feel like I've changed a lot, like in the last 8 months. Like, what does that mean? Do I still like my friends? You know what I'm saying? Like, am I still going to want to hang out? Do I still, and I think it's okay just to admit that in the same way we've all had to wing this together and figure out how to do it, we're just gonna have to figure that out. And so my hope for you, especially because there's 6,000 people here listening to this, is that if that happened to you on stage, you could just go into your microphone and say, guys, I need to, you know,
I'm going home, bye.
Say it. Bye. Bye. I don't know if your management would like that, but just like, guys, I need a break. Hand it back.
You know what would be crazy though? I think my fans would have no problem with it. I honestly believe, I honestly believe that they would have, they might be sad that I'm not there at the concert, but I feel like they would actually have no problem with it.
Yeah.
But
that's the freedom that comes from, they'd be like, yeah, you get more applause for that than you did for anything else. But I mean, I think that's part of the freedom that comes when you're open and honest about it, is because, you know, I think sometimes we mistake judgment for confusion. And so if I've always act one way and then I suddenly act another, people are gonna be like, what just happened? But if you've already kind of laid a groundwork that's more of a real impression of you and not like, you know, a character, you know, I guess a perfect image or whatever. Well, I think we're about to wrap up. I do want to say that I think people can still go buy the From Friends merch now. Yeah. I think it's still for sale. Yep. And then we have some Love is Louder stuff, actually, I think coming out tomorrow from the same company, Represent. So we'll share that. But also, like, I look forward, I'm so glad that I got to meet you. I'm in a way glad that the host that was supposed to do this wasn't able to show up, so I could hang out with you for a little while and sit around and I appreciate that. Thanks for messing up. Thanks for everybody involved messing up the time. He said thanks for messing up. No, I appreciate that. I don't know who messed up, but whoever did. But also, I look forward to like working with you more. And the one thing that I want to say to you is just, I've worked with a lot of people who have started their journey where in the public eye where they talk about their mental health, and then they'll like slip or have a bad day or something, and then they feel guilty. They're like, oh, I'm not the role model anymore. And I just want you to keep doing exactly what you were doing in here today and just being honest. And if you hit a bad patch again, just be honest. And I think that you're going to do amazing. And I do think that you're going to start a lot of conversations that people need to have because you take the fear out of it. You know, I think it's so important. I appreciate that. I really do hope so. Yeah. I really do hope so. Forward to doing more together. And then we'll also save this down on the Love is Louder IGTV so that people that I got a lot of tweets telling me that I needed to save it. So I'm glad, like it was kind of aggressive. It wasn't even a question. It's like, you're going to save it. And I was like, you forgot the question mark there. So I will, okay, gotcha. No one come after me. I'm going to save it down. And have a great night. And I look forward talking again and working together. Just keep it up. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for just being a part of our run through Represent. And we really appreciate it. We really appreciate you guys and everything that you guys do for the community. Yeah. And same exactly. And I think this is what it takes is, you know, you said before that you're not an expert, and I always correct people when they say that you're an expert in your lived experience, and like
True.
that's what we need to hear. I actually think I can tell you a million facts about mental health. I think probably the most valuable thing I have is my story. Like I can, you know, so you are an expert in that, and just keep telling it.
Will do, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for the conversation.
No problem. Oh, sorry. I'm supposed to say where people can go for resources. Sorry.
Oh, go for it.
If you go to loveislouder.org, there's all sorts of tips and tools, but also up in the corner, there's a box that says resources. And if you click that, it's going to be all of the hotlines and the different websites where you can go, you know, depending on if you're dealing with anxiety or depression or issues related to sexuality. We've got it all divided out so you can kind of find what you need. And then if you don't find what you need, there's some numbers and some text lines on there that you can reach out to that can help. Great. Okay, I'm going to pause for a minute to make sure no one's going to message me and tell me I forgot something. Okay, great. Y'all have a good night. Thank you.
Have a good night.